ask what your first impression of me was.
Oh my gosh, great question.
This is an amazing question because you teach so many students and yet they all leave a first impression. It's never like blank. Okay. We were in the hallway that is at the end of, the room that's at the end of the hallway that looks out over the city. It's like the room you have to arm wrestle the other professors to get because it's so nice, but it's small, so you can't take the big classes in there. And Rebecca and Emily, who were attached at the hip at the time, were in that classroom, and you were curious and punky in a good way, and defiant, and also ready. And that was all the things that hovered around you, and you were a little bit scared. Yeah, as people are when they do something that no one in their family has ever done. Rebecca was like, I'm gonna go be an artist. And her family was like, what? No. And she was like, bye. And then she shows up and she was like, am I gonna be an artist? And I was like, I don't know. Yes, you are. And here we are, surrounded by your sculptures. So yes, all of the vibes that I got off you that first day. Also, I felt like maybe you had been to a rave in the last 72 hours, which is a good thing. Okay, shall we begin? Yeah, everyone knows her, so I'm not going to introduce her. But I think that little moment of recognition that you have for people when you first meet them is important. Let's see. I wanted to start with just what is around us, because it is so stunning. And I want to talk about scale. So there's a Tootsie Pop behind your head that's bigger than your head, and a popsicle paleta that's as tall as me. You're working in a way that you can't do in writing. So a lot of the times when I go to the art, I look at things and or even eating food or listening to music, and I'll be like, how do I replicate that in music? Or sorry, in writing. And I looked at this and I was like, you can't replicate this in writing. This is just a visual thing. So what is scale for you?
Why are these big?
Well, they're big because I wanted to be noticed.
You want to be noticed?
So, like, I think they're big because when I live in a story, like, I imagine the beginning, the middle, and the end, even before I act, even before I speak. I'm like, if I say this will probably take me to route this. And I'm very methodical in my day-to-day life. And so the sculpture building was also like that. It was like, if I do this, then I'll have to go like this. And so the scale, so being in a story all the time and being a preacher's daughter, so living under a story my whole life, I felt like they have to be so big because they have to do the speaking, they have to tell the story. So you start at the ground and then you end at play, or you can enter at play and you end at ground. And I felt like they had to be so big so that way that would be clear that it's a story. It has a beginning and a middle and an end. And if I don't know why I don't know why I think that if they're big, then that would do the work, that would do the storytelling work, because truthfully all artwork in any size does that. But I think the big is because I'm the first artist, so I feel like I have to in my family, so I feel like I have to be like bursting out of the gate at all times to be like, yes, I deserve this. Yes, it's this big because of this reason, and also because. Like when my parents see the work, when it's starting to form, they're always really confused by it. But once it's done, they don't have any like, you shouldn't be doing that. They have more of like, how did you do that? Mm-hmm. And so that reaction is like, I prefer that one to like, why are you doing that again? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they get a feeling of, they get a feeling from it. And that makes me feel really proud of myself because I'm like, oh, okay, I did the things. You felt joy, you felt curious, you felt what I want you to feel, which is imaginative. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
And I also think you can't really deny something when it's big.
Yeah.
So the hose, for example, and the camiseta, like these things are.
Yeah.
There's no why or what for. And in writing, you can't get away with that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's always the between the line space in writing, which you're not leaving any room for here, that I kind of love. So, though I will say, interestingly, I remember seeing Frida Kahlo's paintings on the wall, and how small they are. And that's a thing that I think is much harder to pull off in sculpture. And so you are announcing yourself and your presence. Where did writing fall short for you that made you want to move into another medium? At what point were you like, I have to get off the page?
That's a really good question, because like there's a short story that I wrote called Welfare Line, where all the people, they're standing in a line like waiting to receive welfare. And it's a line that like I grew up standing in. And that short story came because I saw one of my friends when I was at the Laureate Lab in Fresno made a drawing of it, and I saw that it was a drawing of people standing in line at a welfare line, and I was like, what would this look like in a short story? Because I wanted to know what every single person in that line was thinking, how they were feeling, and I wanted to know that myself by looking at his drawing. And so I thought, okay, I should write a short story so I can discover what those people are feeling, what they're dealing with, how they feel. And so that was the reason why, like, I started, in my head, I started going from visual to writing. And then, I don't know if writing fell short, but, because it never does. Like, all my ideas always start with words. They always start with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even like the map for Playground, like I came to Medicine like a couple months ago and I took pictures and I wrote like what I would do on this wall, what I would do on this wall, like on my iPad, what I would do on this wall. So I always start with words. But I think with the sculptures, it was like the Chicles, they're the first character in the collection, his name is Chicle. And then there's another short story where someone's like chewing gum for whatever reason. So I guess it was an opportunity to bring all the characters together, and what they all symbolize is like some moment of joy, some moment of pleasure, and I wanted to show that for all of them at the same time. So I guess that's what I thought sculpture could do.
Kind of. Can you guys hear me if I don't use the mic? Yes? Okay, I'm gonna not use it. So we're in like an embodied space.
Yeah.
Your story's coming to light. So I'll now ask the reverse. Given that you've now pushed into the physical space with the symbols of your narrative, what can't the sculptures do?
Oh, that's a good question. Damn, I knew you would tell me for a loop.
I'm sorry.
I
can do easier.
What's
your favorite color?
No, I flew in today because I was at a conference this weekend, so I flew in the morning and I was literally writing down, I was like, like a map for our conversation. So I'm like, this is what I mean by this is what I mean by that. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, she's going to throw me for a loop at some point. So, okay, can you ask me one more time?
Yeah, so I work in language and I love non-verbal art, so all of this is just stunning to me. And at what point are you like, no, actually, a sculpture is not going to get to where I want to go? Or can you take any material? Can you take any space? Can you take any object and turn it into what you want it to say?
I think, like, okay, the volcanic scattering is based off of when me and my dad went to El Salvador and we were climbing those mountains and those hills together. And I think that the sculpture can't show you how much crying is involved on each one.
It cannot.
It can't show you how at the end of it, my dad finally understood like my sense of being, and I finally understood him, and I come to him and I'm like, I love you no matter what, and I would do this again.
Yeah.
Treat me better. Like all immigrant kids want to say.
Yeah.
I don't think the sculptures can tell you that. And I think that is necessary things to know, you know. But I didn't put those words on the wall because right now it's about how home is like a scattering, and you try to put it together, and that's more important to me right now for this piece. But there is other work where I would like you to know that, because then you'd understand why we wanted to climb those hills to begin with, or why someone would go through something that's really hard. So I think maybe you don't feel the thirst, and with writing you can.
That's great.
Yeah.
You didn't have to match conversation. The tears comment is so valid to me, because even as you mention it, the shape of those small, tiny fragments are like tears. They have a water droplet feeling to them. I did want to ask you, because I read the story, Volcano, and it was really coming up for you over and over again during the last year of your MFA and your thesis. Just take us there. What is it about, like, the volcano is a natural occurrence? There's one in my book now because of you.
Yay!
Yes.
The volcanoes. At first, it started because I grew up in California, in Fresno. So I'm north, and my dad grew up in Central America in El Salvador, and then my mom grew up in Mexico, and they met in Fresno. And so growing up, I felt like it was always three things all the time. And if I liked burgers, I felt bad because I wasn't eating a taco, and if I was eating a taco, I felt bad because I wasn't eating a pupusa, like all the time, And so I guess the volcano was like, so I tried to, you try to go backwards, and you're like, okay, well, where does it all start? Is there a thread? And then that's when I thought, like, right, the volcanoes made all the land that we're on. So that's our thread. That's how we all coexist together. That's what brought us here, the volcanic land that we then made a home and a yard again. And so we're all really just playing on the back of the volcano, like in the backyard of the volcano. And so that's where it started, because then I was like, I think for the first time in my life, I was able to give myself something that, like, just pulled everything together in one fell swoop, and it was just like awesome. Okay, we're like, now we're whole, kind of. And so that's why the volcano, and then as it like grew and happened, now I think the volcano is it's a full circle moment, and it gives me more land. And it's like the Earth's fail-safe. If like all of the skyscrapers crumble, like the Earth will make new Earth, and it will readjust. And I thought that was really cool, because that's sort of like what my parents did in North. Like they made new land, they readjusted, and now I'm here. So I guess I just get real like self-assured from it, and power.
I love that answer. Thank you. Okay, so my other question had to do with two things. One's concept of the backyard, like defined by some of the symbols here, but also childhood. Like this is a very jovial, youthful gathering, minus this, which has a kind of ancestry feeling to it, but then everything else is playful. And I don't know, I don't have this question so much as just, do you want to talk a little bit about what playfulness means to you as an artist?
That's a good question. I have three answers.
Okay.
So the first one I can answer for like what play means to me. So play means to me that I get to reclaim my childhood, because I grew up, my parents are working class, they clean houses for a living, they worked in the field. So like I grew up doing that with them. And so I didn't really have a childhood because I was 6, and one of my first memories is me like cleaning a window. And so that was my childhood. And so if I wasn't playing, like I would have to find my own time to play, essentially, because I would then make I would have fun with the brooms and make little like sticks with them, or I would play with the water hose and go like this to it and just like play with it and like try to jump rope with it with my sister, and Mom would be like, please stop doing that because we have to get this done. I didn't know that at the time that we were like, ooh, I didn't know we were poor. I thought everybody went to work after school. And so play to me now means that I like get to intercept the work, because I just feel like I've always worked my whole life. And so now play means that I get to imagine. And so that's what it means to me. And then what I hope it offers to working class people is like a moment of just being like, what? And then you're also not thinking about work or the next check is going to come from, you're thinking about art and play. And that's why they're so big too, because I feel like it intercepts like the work, but not, you know. So that's what play means to me, and that's what I hope it means to somebody else.
The hose means a little bit of gardening to me, so
Yeah.
like less play and more sort of gardening.
Yeah.
But that's a great answer, because you cannot turn away from it, especially with play like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you've taken a already sweet thing and covered it in gum, which is like going to just push the message a little bit more. So your parents have seen the show.
They have seen parts of it. They're going to come up and see it, like, I think next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what they thought of it.
I'm a little nervous about it, I'm not gonna lie, because my dad doesn't know that he's in it, and he's always really surprised that he shows up in a lot of my work. Like, I've showed him the movies that I've made, he's like, oh, I'm in this one, and like, and my sister feels the same way when she read some of my short stories. She's like, oh, is the sister like me? And I didn't even get a chance to answer her because she was like, not everything's about you. And she was talking to herself more, but like my family's always in my work. I adore them so much, and so I'm a little nervous because I'm like, he doesn't know yet. But when I was bringing, because Manguera lives in my old room, and so when I was bringing it up here, my dad was like, are you going to bring it back? Where is it going? I was like, oh, it's going to be in a show. And he's like, oh, okay. Is it coming back, though? And I'm like, yes, it's going to come back.
I love that. Do you envision any ways in which, maybe not this show, but future shows will bring together both your love of writing and of sculpture? Because this is, for me and my experience with you, oddly wordless. You know, there are lots of different ways.
That was really hard.
Yeah.
There's only 3 words. Like, I'm really proud of that.
So
Volcan.
wait, why did you do that? Why did you put a ceiling on how many, and Tootsie rolled off.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
why did you put a ceiling on how many words? Why did you want to keep the wordless?
Because it would be a challenge, because I'm
Yeah.
so wordy.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to challenge myself. And it was hard because there are actually more words that I didn't even use. It was really hard to cut down. So, but honestly,
It was a self-imposed limitation to see where you could take the visuals.
yeah, it was a challenge. So it was like, if it's gonna be, in my head I was like, if I'm gonna make a case for visual art, then it's gonna be a case, a real case.
Yeah.
I know there's multimedia, there's interactive, there's like things that do use words, but I wanted to make a real case for it, because I felt like inside I made a real case for storytelling in the way that I wanted to do it, and so I wanted to make that case to myself of like, okay, visual art, I'm gonna make a case for it. So that way when all the self-doubt kicks in, you're like, no, but I know why, because I did this when instead of doing words, or I had this system for it. So that's why. It was a challenge.
And I wondered this when I first saw it, who were some of the inspirations for the way that you entered into this work? I know your inspirations in literature, but I don't know.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I really like how, like, when Kusama was starting out,
Oh yeah.
she was so like, she would wear polka dots naked during San Francisco, like, and walk around San Francisco and then do performance art. So I liked her audacity, and I liked how she took on color. Like, yeah, it's gonna be color. It's gonna be pumpkins now with like all the polka dots, all the colors, all the time. And so her, I really liked. She gave me permission to use a bunch of color.
I will pause right there.
Yeah.
I have seen a bunch of, I don't know if you guys have been to the museums lately, but she's on tour in the world.
Yeah.
She's around. But Keon, my oldest son, made a replica of her work in 2nd grade.
Oh, wow.
And it was really beautiful. And then I thought, there's something really audacious about a woman, and also like a non-American, non-European woman, being colorful and embracing like perhaps non-traditional patterns and being loud. Like there is something about the scale here which you're like drawing attention to, but the color that you're talking about with Kusama I think is really interesting because she's not trying to hide anything. But she herself doesn't really appear either, much like you in this, you know, like I see your dad, but I don't really see you.
Yeah. Well, that's why I picked writing, because I wouldn't have to be there.
Except you're in every line.
I know.
Yeah.
But like when you do writing, like somebody can the book will do the work for you. It will give them an insight into everything they need to know.
Yeah.
And that's why I picked writing, so I wouldn't have to like be present for it. And another way I feel like I picked sculpture like that, because I feel like Camisa is a self-portrait.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a bunch of like patches of color at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did it so it had to be, so it could do it without me being stared at.
But still being seen.
But still being seen.
Yeah.
Which is
who were some other inspirations?
Someone who I like Klaus Oldenburg. When I saw his work, I was always very like curious about it, but I definitely thought I could do it better than him.
That is a fantastic feeling.
So that's another reason why I wanted to go big. Like if this white guy who never worked a day in his life wants to make a giant burger, I'm like, no.
Good.
I could do
That's
it.
I love that answer. That is like another permission.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you guys in my class, but I was like, when you're having a bad writing day, go to the bookstore, then they have that table in the front where the publishers pay, not this bookstore, other bookstores, corporate bookstores, where the publishers pay them to put the book's cover up, and go read the first page of every single one of those, and they're gonna suck. And then you're gonna feel really empowered. You're gonna be like, I can write better than all these people. Let me go do some writing. But there's something about seeing the shortcoming of other artists, especially when you're in that place where you feel unproven to yourself, where you're like, oh, if he can do this, I can do this. Oh, that's interesting. So that had to do with the scale that inspired. How big was his hamburger? I don't know this guy.
It's about like 4 or 5 feet, like on the floor.
Yeah.
And it stands about 3 feet.
Yeah.
It's a really big piece, which he only started doing because Kusama made a tooth couch. And then he only started making. He moved away from painting.
Sculpture wars.
Yeah, the sculpture wars. Right, the 60 sculpture wars.
Who else?
What else? I'm trying to go in the back of my mind right now.
Music. Movies. Everything comes in sometimes.
I really think like Blood Orange. I'm really inspired by him because the way he like puts in like he'll start conducting and there'll be like a saxophone here, there'll be like some drum beats here, and then the song will end with like a conversation these 2 friends are having like at a pool, like playing pool, and then the song then bleeds into a different song, and I really like how he's so good at layering like real life and like the symphony, like the conducting, and I really love the symphony. There's just something so powerful of being like, okay, let us begin, and we're all going to work at the same time to try to achieve something together, and it only works if we're doing it together, and that's sort of how I felt about words, and so Blood Orange kind of like the way he's able to mix 2 like me and you talking and music. That's really powerful, and so I felt like I'm kind of doing that in my own head with sculpture and words. And I'm still trying to figure it out, and so I don't know. He just gave me a lot of like a map for how to do it myself, putting your heart into it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Hey. Well, I think because all these people here know you, perhaps they have questions. I kind of want to be in dialogue with the audience. It's cozy enough that we can get away with it. Does anyone want to ask Rebecca any questions? Oh yes, the gentleman in the back.
Gentleman in the back.
So, like your whole poetic lineage from Fresno, there's like a history that the poets being visual poets, right? Like stuff coming off the page, and like Rebeca and Cody and Mar, and so I would, you know, I love this so much, but I remember thinking in my head when you was putting, I was like, where are the words? Like, because I thought that. So y'all kind of alluded to that a little bit. Is there like, I don't know what I'm asking. I guess I'm asking, are you planning on pulling any more of that lineage out and maybe collaborating with it in your head? Is it something that happens, or?
Yes. When I first even started writing, it was poetry. And then I moved into short story because I kept trying to put a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was a lot of dialogue, and then the words would run long, and so then I found a poem that's a story. So then that's how I started doing story. But when I started doing poetry, it was in the Laureate Lab, and to this day, Juan Felipe says I'm a poet. And I'm like trying to make a case for all the other arts sometimes. But when I imagine next steps for like even the volcanic scattering, like I'm imagining like volcan, and like the stories that I've written about my dad, like sort of being like a mountain themselves. Like I'm imagining like lines as mountains on the floor, and having them join the wall up, like you could walk it up, and then maybe there'll be like a hologram projection, but then but my dad walking up it. And so I am imagining about how words and sculpture can be more friends in my future. I'm not done, but the reason why there's no words right now is because I was trying to make a strong case for myself for visual art. I don't know why I felt like I had to do that.
Because you were applying to grad school.
Oh yeah.
For sculpture.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Other questions? Yes, I have one.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
You're incredible. And this is so amazing. I have a question about the hose, La Manguera.
Yeah.
Because I remember ever since I met you and you've been telling me about your art. This was 2019 and you already had, I think you already had Manguera, or you were in the process to make it. And you've been working on all these other pieces through these years and like building this world that to me it's like your world, it's Rebeca's world. So in that world, I am very curious about the role that the host is represents in the volcan one, because I remember you, and correct me if I'm wrong, please elaborate if possible. You said that the La Manguera represents all this playfulness in the yard when you're a child, and maybe just like spraying some water is already such an event,
Yeah.
fun event. Mm-hmm. But then in this piece, I feel so much of everything that I heard from you from this experience, and how intensely hard it was. Beautiful, but also hard, and with a lot of deep reflection and understanding from you and your dad, and there was tears, and is the hose here spraying those tears? Is it, why an element that in other pieces of your work it's a fun and something related to play? What is it doing there?
Yeah,
I'm curious.
For this one, for me, the Manguera is a transporter of life, because water gives life. And so I, as a kid, would put deep meaning into everything that I did, because I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to we belong here kind of feeling. So I'm like, so when we would be watering like other people's yards and blah blah blah, I would be like, and this is gonna make a tree, and then this is gonna make a fruit, and then this is gonna make like dinner, and blah 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 blah, right? And so I guess I just like I see the Manguera as like a transporter to life. And so after you do the volcanic scattering, it's like it takes you like this to like the playful world. And so it's like also self-assurance of like the hard comes good, and then with the good there might be bad, but you can come back around, it's a circle. And so I wanted it to transport you to the next part, which is the joy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm seeing it like a transporter like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Any other questions? Yes. This is such a beautiful translation of your short story collection. Like, I just was like, 'cause
Emily saw it too.
and I'm wondering, process of making these pieces, have they spoken back to your short story collection? And whether it's inspired you to go back and work on something new?
Yeah.
I wondered that too.
Yes. 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 There are a lot of moments now when I was spending time with the collection this past week where I was like, oh, now I can, when I think about the collection and I see it, I'm like, okay, this is a good bones, this is a good structure, like this is the PVC. And so now I feel like not everyone, but like, I mean, like all the stories there, all the characters there, all of the land there, all the details there are like, they're really the bones, they're the PVC. And so now I want to go back and I see stronger moments to really put some like emphasis on some more heart, more of like I feel like I accomplished what I wanted to do here. I don't know, when I read the book myself, I'm like, I don't know if I'd get there, me. So I want to like go back and like definitely like put more in and like flesh everything out. And like to really, really answer your question, like the last story is called When You Come to Your Resting Place, and it's about a father whose child has just died, and him and his wife separate the ashes, and the wife does one thing with the ashes, and he decides to go back home to Laleh and spread them at the foot of a volcano. And so when I wrote that piece, that's the ending of the short story collection, and that piece I wrote in 2020. And so and then in 2022, when my grandma passed away, my grandma and my dad hadn't been back home in 45 years to El Salvador. And so Deadass called me and he was like, we have to go this year, we have to go back home, like it's time, we have to go back home. And I was like, yes, I don't know what that means, but okay. And so I went with him to El Salvador, and so he hadn't been back in 40 years, and I hadn't even been alive that long. Not even half that time. So I was like, oh God, I was scared. And so when I went with him, it was like this whole experience, but we ended up walking up a volcano. And before the volcano, there was a hydrangea bush, and I'm not making this up, there's a hydrangea bush, and the hydrangea is really, really important because my grandma had them planted in front of our red house in Fresno, our first house in Fresno. And so when I saw the hydrangea bush up for the volcano and then going up it for like 5 hours, it was just like, oh my God. And it just taught me the power of words and how the circle is always going. And that felt really, after I saw that hydrangea bush, I was like, okay, now I have the experience, I need to go and finish my book. But it's also, then I think what ends the sculpture series is a hydrangea bush, right? Like a hydrangea bush couch. And so like it also planted another seed for how to end this story, the sculpture story. So yes, there's more. Yes, I feel like, yeah.
I think that's a really good place to have you read. Don't you all? Don't you want to hear some of these stories? Yay.
Yay. Okay. So I'm going to read a piece called The Uninvited Guest. And so in The Uninvited Guest, it has to do with a mom and a daughter go back home to Mexico. And see, there's always going back home. They go back home to Mexico, and essentially what's happening right now in the story is there's a family of like 6, and there's a brother that the other siblings don't acknowledge as one of the brothers because he's a half. And so the mother in the story invites like their half brother to a wedding, and so nobody knows that he's coming because they know about him, but like they didn't invite him on purpose. But the mother is making a case that he should be invited and he should come because he's part of the family. And so it's from the point of view of the story, it's a young girl, and she's watching her mother do this, like this really, really hard thing, and so she's kind of just watching it unfold. Oop, my bad. So that's what's happening in the story. Tío Gabriel lives in Acapulco, on a steep hill next to the ocean. When I was younger, I would sit on the porch of this house and look out into the ocean until it was sky. Hang my arms high, let the wind pull my white cotton outfit. In the afternoon, I'd help his daughter sell chicle in a blue shed store in front of his yard. Every yard is different. Ours is on Walnut Street, with two sides, one green with grass, and the other looks like a brown, sandy desert. A garage connects to a patch of grass where 4 trees live: peach, mango, orange. The biggest tree lives near a wooden fence, a beautiful, full-grown avocado tree. I know the avocado tree well. I know what it will do and when it will do it. I think it's the neighbor's favorite too, because of the way the avocado tree looms over into the alley. Makes it easy for the neighbors to come, reach up, pluck some fruit right from the branch. This is the alley I pass through when I want a different route home. I like watering the plants here in Mexico, but I miss home. There is one more thing to understand. In Mexico, my mother is a whole different person. She blooms because this is the motherland. She says here there's more room to breathe, space to roam, a language we all speak. Here, she is who she is without any barrier. She can jump right in, beat into beat, and she's never been a woman to waste any time. Manolo waves goodbye to the waitress who's cleaning up the table they were just sitting at. He turns to face my uncle, his uncle. Why do you look familiar to me? He says. This is your tío Gabriel, Mama says, smiling. He's also a brother. She removes her sun hat and throws it to me in the back seat. I play with the rim with my sweaty fingers. Manolo grips the steering wheel. He looks confused. My mom repeats herself. This is your tío Gabriel. He's coming to your wedding. I invited him. Tío Gabriel takes off his hat. We just came from the east. It's been a long ride, he says. It's about to be, I think to myself. I'm glued by sweat to my seat in the back of this truck. The bride's dress in between me and Tío Gabriel. Manolo starts the car and the radio starts to blast. He quickly shuts it off. Maybe he's in shock. He has never met his uncle before. I can tell because he's staring at him through the rear view mirror. Mama is sitting in the front seat with her eyes closed, pretending to fall asleep. Manolo starts the car. The angel babies are spitting out water together, and we drive away from the downtown buildings. When we finally stop, it's to let the cows cross the road. I'm going to pee, Manolo says, turning the car off. My mom turns it back on for the air conditioning. Sitting in the back of the truck, I can see the dirt hills go on for miles. There are so many hills. They slope into each other like big scoops of ice cream. Mama opens her eyes and turns to Tío Gabriel. ¿Estás bien? You don't worry. You're family. Familia shows up for family, she says, reaching out for his hand. Don't you worry. I want you here. She tells him, we're all going home. I hear the moos of the cows in my stomach, deeper than a growl. The sound of their hooves in the dirt louder than the motor of the car. When Manolo returns, the door slam opens my eyes awake. Why are there so many cows here? I ask. There's a lago over there, over the montes, Mama says. I'm very excited to meet everyone. Enjoying the wedding. It's an honor, Tío Gabriel says. Manolo reaches into his wallet and takes out a picture of a chubby, young, brown man. He holds up the picture for Tío Gabriel to see. If it means anything, you look just like him, Manolo says. I peer out from my seat and for the first time see my grandpa. You do, I yelp. The cows finish crossing the road. They moo and go eat grass. Have you met anyone else from the family? Manolo says, looking at my mom. Yes, Clara, when I was younger, Tío Gabriel says. I'm honored to come to your wedding. Felicidades. That's my mother, Manolo says. He looks at me. Mija, hold the dress in your lap so it doesn't get dirty. Can you do that for me? I nod my head yes. I look at Tío Gabriel and smile at him. It is very good to see him. I want to ask him about his yard and my cousin and the chicle store, but the fading blue sky is more interesting. Mama sleeps the entire ride back to Tia's house. A green lizard scatters by when we walk into my Tia's concrete house hours later. I follow Mama into the kitchen where Tia and the bride are drinking coffee. I place the wedding dress I've been carrying on the kitchen table. The bride starts to open the box. A white dress appears. I walk to the back door, open it, and sit on the top step. The house is on a hill, and from here I can see the cacti I watered earlier. I can see the well where I've been collecting water. I start to hear shouting between Mama and Tia. The back door opens, and it's the bride, Magda. "What are you doing out here by yourself?" she asks me. I don't like Mama's voice when she shouts. "Yeah, me either," she says, plopping down next to me. The light from the window makes a light square shadow on the steps. "Have the mosquitoes been eating your legs?" I shake my head yes. I stick on my legs, showing her the bite marks. I try to look her in the eye. "Are you in love?" Magda's hair is curly and bouncy, ready for the wedding. She pushes it behind her ears, revealing little hoop earrings. She takes them off and clasps them together. The earrings now look like the number 8. "You know how there's a net over your bed protecting you, so the mosquitoes don't bite your legs? Well, this is like that." She places the earrings on the palm of my hand. "Even with the net, the mosquitoes still eat my legs," I say. She nods her head, stands up, and dusts off her skirt. "Yes," she says. "Even with the shield, they still eat." She enters the house. There is no more shouting. The small square of light on the concrete steps lead my eye to darkness, where I know the yard I have been watering all summer lives. If I could pick up the light square and place it right here where the darkness meets the plants, then all through the night, a small portal of light would hover over a plant world. How comforting that would be to know that a hole filled with nature sits before the darkness. But I can't see past the concrete steps, and if I had a light square, then the mosquitoes would find me and bite me, and while I water my plants, and then who will water in my place? The light square on the steps disappears. The stars, the only light for miles. I think about Belmont Street. How different this land is to the one I miss. I know there is a route to get back home, but I can't imagine it really exists. And then it goes to the wedding.
Okay, thank you. How are we on time? Is it- oh,
We have comments.
Okay. So, I'm going to enter, because I want your voice to be the last thing in the room. And I did want to say very quickly, you are my first student in 20 years of teaching that has moved into sculpture. And when you told me you were doing this and you were applying to grad school, I was so excited. I feel like you refuse single dimensionality. Your stories will never be flat. Your sculptures will never be flat. Or maybe they will never be small, or maybe they will be very small. But they will never conform to expectation. And that wildness of mind is so valuable. And your inability to rest inside of a medium is a gem. So I applaud you and thank you for this work. And I look forward to seeing so much more of it.
Gracias, Laleh.
Gracias. Thank you guys for coming.
Yay, we did it. Thank you guys so much for coming. Like, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for
These are the good friends. Yes. Thank you guys.
And thanks.
Oh, yes. We are supporters. Oh my God, I feel like I'm sitting inside of Rebecca. Rest out there. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, honey. That was great. That was amazing. I talked to you the other day, but now I've learned so much more. Hell yeah. That makes me so happy. This was great. No, I'm honored. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do it like a year ago. Okay. The sunlight. Yeah. Hitting. You don't want to go like on the inside.
I
Cultural difficulties.
I'm hoping it